All right, so welcome everyone to our first episode of our podcast. We're going to be reading Warbreaker as our book by Brandon Sanderson. And the this is the first episode, so we're doing the prologue through chapter 3. So it's going to be technically a total of 4 chapters. So I hope you guys enjoy. And I am Midnight, and I'm here with Mythic. Say hi.
Hey,
And Darkness.
Hello.
All right. So I guess we'll just go straight into episode 1. So, prologue. We started with Vasher being imprisoned in Tetelier, which is the capital city of Haladrin. I can't say that. Haladrin, sorry. uh,
Paladrin.
Haladrin, which
At least that's
is
how it's said in the pod in the
in the audiobooks. That's good to
yeah.
know. Yeah. Uh, on a note in that regard, Brandon Sanderson has come out saying in all of his books, you can pronounce places and people however you want. I don't actually know what the inspiration for names in this world was, but he just say like even in worlds where he bases names off like different cultures, he doesn't even always pronounce them like the way they technically should be pronounced. So any way is fine technically.
Mhm.
So
I'm not, yeah, I wasn't trying to
no, I know. I'm just saying, like, in general. Anyways, so Halandrin what is the land of returned gods, lifeless servants, biochromatic research, and color is how it's introduced to us. And then it's also mentioned that Halandrin has no lords or ladies, but neighboring countries do, which we learn more about their system later. But if you're able to, remember, before taking into account chapter 3, what did you guys think they meant by those sorts of things? Returned gods, lifeless servants, biochromatic research. Like,
um
what were your thoughts on that?
well, if I can remember back when I was first reading that, I think it was that I was more thinking of like they were going to be like they talked about breath a lot, or he talked about breath a lot and how he didn't have a lot, but kept hinting at that there would be you could get more at some point or somehow. And then once he took more, he didn't explain how much he got from the guy at the end, but he at least said he had a vast more than he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking maybe it was just like uh the people who have like the most the more breadth you have, the higher in status, I guess is
Mm.
what I was thinking originally, hence why it was like he was talking about the king, I think, or maybe that came later, but
The
I'm pretty
God
sure
King
I thought
does
he
come
said
later,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said something about it too
Yeah, the
at one
God King
point,
is
but
mentioned later in the prologue.
yeah, okay, but yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of them, Darkness?
Okay, so personally, when I first read the bio stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking more of like on the science sort of aspect for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
It pulled me towards there, like human alteration.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where one of my aspects went. And then when I first realized that they could like be given more breath, right, which is like
Mm-hmm.
the magic they use, um, and how it sort of like made them more powerful. I figured like instantly that people would definitely try and gather as much as they can to get more powerful, which I assumed would be some sort of like ascension
Mm-hmm.
to the point of like where gods come in, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like someone can ascend up to that point is what I thought.
Yeah. And so, what did you also guys think of lifeless servants? What do you think?
Well,
What
I
did you
mean,
think that were?
that's hard. It's hard for me to say it now that I already kind of have an idea of what it is
Mm-hmm.
due to chapter 3, but I just thought they were like undead, like
Mm-hmm.
somebody
Yep.
who was dead, and then like because he was putting breath into objects,
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, well, if they're gods, maybe they can do the same thing, but they could do it with actual people, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're just bringing people back to life. But
That's exactly what I thought too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, they kind of have like obviously like a lot of implications within the name itself. So, so yeah, so that was just the first little, that was pretty much like the first little section of the prologue. You just get that introduced with not much information just yet. And then we get Vasher, the main character of the prologue, showing off how he uses breath. There's a lot of explanation. It's explained that everyone as we mentioned, has one breath, but Vasher currently has 50. He apparently got them off someone who collected them from other people. I believe he says that he doesn't like to do the actual collecting from people himself. He gets them from someone who collects them from other people. He also says 50 breaths is enough to reach the first heightening, and that
Mhm.
is very few breaths to him. He's had a lot more in the past, but to most people that would be considered a treasure of breaths. He also uses his breath to awaken a little straw dude, little straw doll, and he mentions he has to use an eyebrow hair as a focus. Breaths give him the ability to see colors brighter and feel connection with other people, such as feeling them move in areas near him. He's also able to collect his breath back from the awakened doll when it brings him back the keys, which is trailing blood.
And murders people.
um, and then he also mentions that losing breaths is not fatal, but he does feel dimmer without his breaths. And
That
he
comes
would,
in later too.
yeah, and breaths give him the, oh, I've copied that twice. Uh, the ability to see colors better, yes. So yeah, so just with the little introduction to how breaths work, what did you guys think of breaths and awakening?
Some
What's like,
interesting magic.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, I figured Press was like an interesting concept that I've never really like seen pop out in any other sort of story like this. Um, the fact that you can retrieve that same magic that you used to do something at that like range, like bringing a puppet to life,
mm-hmm,
is like incredible. Considering that if you, it doesn't take anything away, right? When they bring
yeah.
it back.
It limits
Yeah.
basically what you
So
can do at the same time, but it doesn't limit
yeah,
your future
yeah. So
abilities.
there's like no cost unless you don't get it back,
Mm-hmm.
which
Uh,
is insane.
yeah, and we do get, I mean, later in the chapters, we do get some indication, but I'm just curious, how many heightenings do you guys think there are? Like, this first heightening does,
Are we
apparently,
talking about what did we think in the prologue or now?
I mean,
Because
you do
it
get, as I
kind of
said,
hints on it a
it
little,
does,
a little
yeah,
bit.
you do get some indications later, but I mean, we don't technically get a concrete answer on
Now,
how many there are.
I mean, I want to say at the current moment, 9 was the highest I remembered somebody saying.
Hmm. Do you think it's going to go higher than that, or do you think nine's going to be the absolute maximum?
No, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell because all right, I'll come back to this because
Okay.
we gotta get to chapter 3. When we get to chapter 3, I'll explain
Yeah, we
my
can go back to that.
thought process on that because like I don't want to like say something
Yeah.
that we're already not at
Yeah,
yet.
no problem. What about you, Darkness? Did you have any theories about how many heightenings there might be?
When I first read the prologue, I definitely had a theory that it would be way higher than at least eight because I'm pretty sure Vasher mentioned something about being able to reach the fifth,
Yeah, I think
and
he
so
might at some point. I don't remember where in the prologue that it might have been.
yeah, but he also mentioned that the King God had or the God King
Yeah, the God King.
had way more than that. So
Hmm.
I'm assuming that that's where like I set my range of like expectations towards that.
Yeah, for sure. So after we see the little kind of show off of how the magic awakening and breasts work, uh, it's briefly mentioned how Vasher ended up in the prisons here, which was the God King's dungeons, as it is the capital city, which we don't get told really in this prologue, but we do get told in later chapters that this is the capital city, which is where the God King resides. So it's the God King's dungeons that he's in, and he did it by beating up a priest of the iridescent tones, along with apparently about 20 other men at a bar. Um, and that's how he ended up here. Vasher, once he's free of his cell, goes to find a man who is in a cell specifically for people who can awaken. It's completely colorless, and I don't think he's like chained to the ceiling, and there's like nothing around that he can touch. It's mentioned that there's a little more explanation of how breaths work, and to awaken, you need breath, color, and a command. It's also mentioned that the iridescent tones are, which is the harmonious relationship between color and sound, which is obviously a religious aspect. Obviously, it's because there's priests of the iridescent tones. Um, so,
Real quick, it is
mhm,
also mentioned. It is also mentioned that you can't. forcibly take somebody's breath. They
Hmm.
have to willingly give it,
Yeah, I was going to go into
which
that
is also
as we
yeah,
talk
which
about
also comes
Var.
up later.
Yeah, so he gets to Var. I'm not sure that's how I pronounced it.
That yeah, it was Var.
Var, yeah. So Var is someone he's apparently previously known but hasn't seen for, I believe, a few years. And he basically convinces Var to give him his breast after basically saying, well, you're either giving it to me or you're giving it to these priests or the God King or whoever. You're going to be giving it to someone, so you might as well give it to me over them because they're going to force you to eventually give them up and then kill you. And he agrees to basically kill Var quickly in exchange so that he's not left to be tortured still. Um, it does mention briefly that at the ninth heightening, you can command objects without
Hmm.
touching them, and that only the God King is to be known of that heightening, which we did talk about briefly earlier. We do not know if there's anything higher than that, but considering only the God King has gotten to the ninth, it seems pretty high. And that they also mentioned briefly that you can gain perfect pitch at the second heightening. Uh, and then of course Vasher kills Var. Var gives him his breasts. What did you guys think of Var?
I mean, we didn't see a lot of him, but he
Mm-hmm.
seemed like he understood why he was there for whatever reason, and that he's very strong-willed. So because he didn't let them uh break him to for them to give them the breaths.
Mm-hmm.
So like you know, I think which is pretty cool. Kinda, and I remember because I have it down here on my notes. I remember that thinking that when he did end up getting killed, or when Vasher had killed him, that maybe he would come back later as a whatever the word, the Undyings or whatever the
Lifeless
thing that it said.
servants.
Yeah, the lifeless. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that would be really cool to see him fight. To read him fight them. I was like, that'd be an interesting thing. The other thing I noticed also in my notes with the command that he says,
Mm-hmm.
when he says "my life to yours,"
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, doesn't that mean that you're killing the person?" Like, I mean, I know he explained it earlier that that doesn't. It just drains them and makes them feel weak
Yeah.
when they don't have breath. But like, "my life to yours" is like is a very specific line of like they're
Mm-hmm.
giving themselves to you. So I mean, it comes
Yeah.
up a lot. It comes up again later too, and I was like, very weird.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting thing to note. Yeah, is um, yeah, it does seem like it's very much related to their life, their breath, and we do know that everyone has just one breath. It's been explained to, or they're born with one. What
In
did you
that
think?
in that
Mhm.
in that aspect of like the command to give your own breath to someone else,
Mhm.
I took that in a different sort of tone, more as in
Okay.
like that command means loyalty to the person, but if it's like a no choice thing, it's not gonna have the same impact. You know what I mean? Because of course you would want to give your breath to somebody who you trust and
Yeah, and I believe it is
you who
mentioned in
really
this
needs it.
chapter that you cannot take breath
Yeah.
unwillingly, like which is why he still was alive and had them, because like
Hmm.
they basically are trying to torture him into willingly giving. I mean, if it's with torture, is it really that willing? But you basically have to say that phrase, it sounds like. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you can't just take people's breaths from them, which is very interesting. And then I think Mythic kind of partially answered this, but do you guys think that Var will come up later? Like, do you think we'll learn more about him later, or do you think he's kind of just a one-off character to kind of just explain more about heightenings and to kind of give a bit more context to Vasher?
I hope he comes back later.
I personally think he will come back later, considering that there was a lot of like background stuff left like unsaid,
Mm-hmm.
like including the reason he was there.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that was it for Var, and then Vasher goes back to collect Nightblood, who it specifically said he's only an inch unsheathed, but all the guards are dead. Uh, they're all dead. I believe Nightblood is in the chest. Somehow, while sheathed, he's in the chest of one of the guards. And Nightblood, then the sword, speaks into Vasher's mind. He seems to think that Vasher is impressed that he's killed all the guards, even though Vasher doesn't really give a much of a response to that. And it's also noted, actually earlier, I believe, when we first see Nightblood get taken, that colors get deeper and darker when Nightblood's sheath is unclasped. So what do you guys think of Nightblood, and what do you think Nightblood is?
Okay, so I have a lot of notes on
Yeah,
Nightblood, but I
Nightblood's
think
definitely one of the more interesting
uh, yeah,
parts of
I think
this.
Nightblood is definitely like somebody that
Mm.
gave breath to an item or something to that extent. That's what my first thought was, because he seems like he has this like thought pattern of like I'm the best, I'm better than everyone, and it's very human about it. And I was like, I feel like this is something that has like somebody has found a way to give their consciousness into an object in order to continue to live on.
So you
And
think it's
then,
maybe like like a more powerful form of awakening potentially?
yeah, I was like, this is an interesting blade. But I mean, I also play D&D, so
Yeah, I was
you
gonna
know,
say he's
I
very much
think
in
of
a D&D
these.
sense. It's a sentient weapon.
Yeah.
What did you think, Darkness, of Nightblood?
Um, I'm sort of in a similar aspect there, but my thought process, especially right now that I'm thinking about it, is Vasher originally said he had way more breaths, and
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious to see if he was the one to put that like much magic power into the sword, right?
Mm. So you think he's just put like
Since
a ton of breaths into him, and that's caused him
I
to be sentient
I
potentially?
I think so because the sword seems to have like major like loyalty, like master appreciation sort of like thought process.
Yeah, he does want to impress
So
Vasher. It seems like is what
yeah,
he implies.
definitely a great magical sword. So
I killed them
Hmm.
all. Aren't you proud of me?
Yeah.
I
Aren't
have
you
that in the
impressed?
quotes on my thing.
out of all the chapters, I'm pretty sure that's my favorite sort of
Yeah.
like
And so as
magical
like
aspect.
a wrap up to this prologue, what do you guys think of Vasher?
Well, I think Vasher's very cool. Not my favorite that we've read now, but he definitely was pretty cool back then when I was reading that originally. And the other thing I have on here is why I wrote. Oh, I know why I wrote duffel. He has this duffel bag that keeps getting mentioned, but
Mm.
like, I'm I'm almost curious of what's like. Is there a significance to this duffel bag? Like, is there maybe there's something in it or about it? Maybe it's somebody specifically had given it to him or something. I feel like there's a history on it.
Mm.
Just keeps getting mentioned quite a lot.
Yeah. And also, I'm kind of curious because this is technically just the prologue, and I mean, everyone, if you're reading along, would know. He's not in any of the other three chapters. Do you think he's going to be a main character that we see more like point of views of, or do you think he's just a prologue character that might get mentioned in the background to other people's point of views in the future, or do you think that's kind of it with him?
I mean, I don't think this is the last we see of him, but I mean, after just with the little bit after that we read, like it almost seems as if it's starting up a different main character. Um, which I mean, when we get to it, but I think the girl that's being sent away is the one that I think is going to become the main protagonist.
Hmm.
Vasher might just be something that like somebody she sees or meets who maybe teaches her something, or maybe at some point like he might be some. I feel like he's going to be somewhere along the lines like a mentor maybe or something to
Hmm.
that extent.
What do you think, Darkness? Do you think he's going to come back?
Yeah, for sure. There's so much work done into him in just the prologue. It has to come up again for
Hmm.
sure.
All right. Is there any more thoughts about the prologue, or should we move on to chapter one?
Um, Actually, I just thought about something.
Hmm.
Considering that Vasher had noticed that he gained what is it that you gain at the second ascension? Perfect pitch?
Perfect pitch you get at the second
Yeah.
Yeah.
heightening.
Mhm.
There you go. I realized that even though you pass the heightening,
Hmm.
that's what it's called, right? Um,
Mhm.
even though you pass the heightening, it's the effects that you gain from it is definitely not permanent and can be reduced back to like nothingness.
Yeah, it is implied that he does not have the abilities from further heightenings that he may have had previously. You
Yeah.
pretty much, it sounds like the number of breaths you have at that time is what determines your heightening. And so if you lose breaths, it is implied,
Even the
yeah,
abilities gained
you
go
could.
away.
Yeah, they could go away based on what we know here, especially since he loses his first heightening and grows dimmer when he uses his
Mhm.
awakening powers.
Also, when he did use the sword and the colors deepened, I'm assuming the sword is sort of like a conduit or like a power booster as well.
Mm, yeah.
Yep. That's pretty much my thoughts.
All right. Any final thoughts, Mythic, or should we move on?
I think we go on.
All right. So, chapter one, we're introduced to a new character, Ciri, who is the fourth child of a king. We don't learn the king's name just yet. I believe it's Dedalin. We talk a little bit about her family. She's got Fafin, who is the third child and apparently has done the family duty of becoming a monk. We've
And then
got
my favorite person in the group, Ian.
uh, we've got Ridger, who is the only son. He's set to inherit the throne, second born. And then we have the eldest Vivenna, who is
Yes.
betrothed to a god, which we don't, I think, in this first chapter know that it's the God King, but we do find out later that it is she's betrothed to the God King of Halandren. Uh, Ciri kind of talks about how she's considered redundant and can kind of do as she pleases, which I think she has some bad feelings towards, but also enjoys that she has a lot more freedom than her sisters. They live in a small village, and there's some other places briefly mentioned that we don't get really any other mention of, which is Zaka and Hudras. And then Bivalis is also mentioned, which I believe we learn later is what the town she's in is called. Bivalis, I believe, is the or no, sorry, I think that's the capital of Idris. Sorry, not the town they're in. I don't know if it's the town they're in currently or not. I think she considers it a different place. So their palace is not in the capital, Bivalis. She also mentions Halandrin as a terrible place, and then also mentions series the town series in apparently keeps color out of everything to keep away awakeners. They're very anti-awakener. It's
Uh,
all we also get
Bavalis was the capital.
yeah, Bivalis, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned that Ciri can control her hair color. She's got hair color abilities, and it's currently a golden blonde for Joy. And Vivenna has the same ability but can control it a lot better than her. Um, so, because I don't believe we get
So does
much
her dad.
description of much more of it later besides just changing colors, what do you think of Ciri's magical hair? And is it related to breasts or is it some different type of magic entirely?
Go ahead, Darkness.
Personally, this is a little hard because of what I've read ahead, but
Exactly,
um,
You've
right?
have you read ahead?
no, as in like the next
No,
chapter.
as in
Oh.
like the
Um,
next two chapters.
yeah. Um, so um, I just I figured it was like natural to that sort of like part of the what do you call it? Um,
To
like
their
the whole like
country or to their type of people?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
mean, I don't
figured it
think
would
I
be
asked
like
too many
normal
questions
to
about
like
it later, so we can talk about a little bit about the hair color changing later as well, right now if you
yeah.
want.
I figured it would be part of like that whole like aspect of the area
Hmm.
they reside in, like a normal sort of thing.
Yeah. But we do
Mm,
learn that it is just it sounds like the just her and her
their
sister or
their
the royal
bloodline.
family. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, their bloodline because it's the dad, the
yeah,
sister, and her so far that have been introduced that have this hair changing color,
Yeah.
and the dad seems to have a slight grasp upon it, but like
Yeah.
some strands seem to change. Her sister seems to be able to hold at bay at pretty much at all times, and then she just doesn't seem to care. Like
Yeah,
she
it's
just lets it go,
it seems to be
which is really
like
cool.
controlling your emotions, almost like you if you
Mhm.
control your facial expressions, you can control your hair color. It's kind of like a I think I would kind of base it off that like it's kind of like if it stays black, it's a poker kind of like your poker face.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, even before I read on it, it's kind of gotten to the point that I already knew it, like I had the feeling on what it is later.
Hmm.
What it kind of gets explained. It's not like exactly explained, but like kind of you get a hint on certain things. Is that certain objects or things just seem to have this like innate ability to become like
Mm.
change their natures, and like I think it's going to be an reoccur I was thinking it's going to be a reoccurring thing over time where you're just going to see a bunch of different items or facial or not facial but like visual effects that seem to change that people either can control or don't control, um and like I was like, this is going to be a pretty like because it gets not explained, but it gets like mentioned quite a few times. So I was like, I feel like this is going to be something pretty major at some
Hmm.
point.
Yeah. And so it's been mentioned that Syria is Idrian, which we learn that's what their country is Idris, and that their religion is called Auster. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly.
So far, you have.
Yeah. And then also their religion is called Auster, and also the name of their god, which is the
Wait,
god of
oh, I'm sorry.
colors,
Wait, yeah,
is
yeah.
also named Auster. So it's both the name of the
Uh,
religion and the name of
in
the
the
god.
in the like when I was reading it to me, it was Astray, I
Auster.
believe,
Okay. I think it might be like yeah, like a French origin or something
but it
like
was yeah. I mean,
Auster.
I even changed my Steam name to it.
So yeah, so that is their what they consider their god, which is Auster. And then Ciri goes back to the castle where she speaks to Mab, who is a kitchen mistress or kitchen stewardess, with the
Oh, I
exact
love
terms.
her. She's so fucking
uh,
awesome.
so she's reprimanded a bit by Mab, but then we also learn more about Haladrin and Awakeners. They discuss them from their own point of view. Mab claims that Awakeners are devils sucking the souls out of children, strangling people with their own clothing, bringing men back from the grave and using their bodies for cheap labor, and sacrificing women on unholy altars. It's also mentioned by Mab that Halandrin seems to have a lot more of everything, pretty much, compared to their country. So yeah, what do you comparing that to what we learned about Awakeners in the prologue? What do you think about Awakeners in this
I mean,
context?
because that's what Vasher is, right? An
Yeah,
awakener.
Vasher
At
is
least that's how he's
Awakeners.
explained. Yeah, like so I was like, I mean, I when reading it in the first chapter, I was like, I mean, we just got to know Vasher, so I'm not really sure if I believe you. Like, I'm
We
not
also don't get to see much
100%.
of Vasher. He could be an absolutely horrible
He
person.
could, he could. I mean, but he didn't seem like I don't know the way he coerced uh Var to give him the breath. He didn't seem like he was doing it out of a malicious thing, more of just like it's either me or them kind of idea. Who would you rather have it?
Hmm.
So he didn't seem terrible, but I mean, till you get to chapter 3 when my favorite person comes up, you you don't really see the other side of anybody else, you know,
Hmm.
and so you're given like one side of a story and you just have to either believe it or not. And right now I'm kind of holding out thinking that, you know, maybe they're the people that aren't as good, especially since they're trying to tell Siri not to use color when I mean, it just seems like that's dulling life.
Yeah. What do you think, Darkness? What do you think about the two different kind of
Um,
like versions we get of Awakeners?
well, when I first saw what she had said about Awakeners, I definitely didn't believe it at all. I know there were definitely gonna be like awful people, considering that it is magic and it can be used in any form.
Hmm.
Um, but to me, I feel like most of them couldn't be like gathered as one sort of stereotype. Um, Definitely like some sort of propaganda for that country, considering that they really don't like Awakeners.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right.
I think it
Uh,
was just exaggerated to that point.
yeah, you feel like they kind of just like demonize them, kind of.
Yeah.
So I mean, as I said, it was mentioned that like they specifically keep colors out of their apparently
Yep.
towns to keep away Awakeners. Like they're all very like anti. It sounds like the whole country of Idris is very anti-Awakener. So yeah, so we then switch POVs from Ceres to Dedalin, her father, who's basically contemplating with General Yarda whether to send his oldest daughter, Vivenna, to her death, is how he describes it. They state that war is coming to Halandrin. Uh, oh, sorry, coming with Halandrin, apologies. And that Halandrin considers them rebels. Var is briefly mentioned as a rebel leader. They do bring him up very
Mhm.
briefly, which kind of just explains why he was probably in prison if he's a rebel leader. It's also mentioned that, oh yeah, this is when it's introduced that the god Vivenna is to marry is the god king of Halandrin. And that's because Halandra needs to reintroduce the traditional bloodline into its monarchy, meaning that Halandra and Idris were somehow connected in the past. It's also mentioned that Halandran assassinated Dedalin's father, apparently 20 years ago. Um, and then Yarda brings up that Halandran's army has 40,000 lifeless, and that he also briefly mentions other countries called Tedrail, and he also mentions the Many War without much context. Um, and then it is brought up that a child of the God King is a stillborn monster and will become the next returned god. So, what do you think of the God King and his potential child? Do you think it would actually be a monster, or is this mostly just due to tensions between the two nations and their differing religions?
Go ahead, Darkness.
Um, I think for the most part there it's just like slander, but there is definitely it is like a child of God, so it's definitely not gonna be normal in their view.
Mm-hmm.
Um, especially with the way they're probably gonna be raised, considering that it would oppose most of their like strict um view on awakeners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think they would just exaggerate most stuff there.
What do you think, Mythic?
I mean, I kind of agree with Darkness. The only thing I wrote in my notes for this man was that I think he's this. I don't like him. I just don't like him.
You don't like Dedalin?
I don't like him or his advisor that he speaks to. They're
Yarda,
just
yeah.
yeah. They don't seem they seem knowledgeable in certain aspects, but naive to certain things too. Like
Mm-hmm.
he just is he even before you get to the near the end of this when he makes a decision that I think is the dumbest decision. Um Even before that, he just seems that it, this is his only this is the only way to do this. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't we can't figure out any other way to stop impending war that's coming, but no matter what we do, it's going to come. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense to me because I get it. This guy might be, all powerful with all this army of whatever, but
Lifeless.
like when I didn't say whatever because I didn't
Yeah,
know
no, okay.
lifeless. I'm saying whatever more of like whatever these things are,
Yeah,
as in I don't
whatever,
know
yeah.
if maybe it's just a title they're giving to like their army. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
call random people lifeless, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is
Um,
capitalized, so I believe it is supposed to be specifically lifeless servants. They
yeah.
shorten it to lifeless. So, but yeah, we don't know really what lifeless servant means. We get
Mhm.
very little information about what a lifeless servant could potentially be.
But yeah, I just
Um,
think he's naive. Him and his
mm-hmm.
advisor.
Yeah, and then this is also when we next meet Vivenna, who is very calm, composed. She's like a very serious person. She's basically ready to go to what she calls her fate, which is marrying the God King. But Dedalin decides he wants to send Ciri instead. And it's also
Dumbest
very much
mistake
implied
ever.
that he prefers Vivenna to Ciri. So what do you guys think of Dedalin in general, and what do you think of his choice to send Ciri instead of Vivenna?
I think it's gonna bite him in the ass.
Yeah, I think that decision kind of messed them up, like self-sabotage, considering that Siri already liked color to some point.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in future chapters she's probably definitely gonna adjust better to life over there than in her original kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like Vivanna would have been like sort of against all of it, opposing all of it all the time. Most likely would have been used against them.
Mm.
Mhm.
All right. Any last thoughts on this chapter, or should we move
Well,
on to chapter
I
two?
think she's gonna hold a grudge, but that's just me.
Who, Ciri or Vivenna?
Siri. I think. Well,
Ciri.
no, I think Vivenna's gonna do something. I mean, we haven't gotten to a point where I know this for
Oh,
at all
Yeah.
yet, but I think Vivenna's gonna go and like attempt to save her sister.
Well,
Um,
we'll get into that. I think at the end of next
yeah.
chapter, we'll get
Well,
into that after.
well, I mean, at the end of this chapter, I believe is the where she's already going, right?
Next chapter is when Ciri's heading off to
um,
Mm,
Halandra.
this chapter is it ends up with Vivenna like realizing that she is the one redundant now, right?
I believe that is
No, that's the second
next
chapter.
chapter.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
next chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all
Oh,
Okay.
next
Yeah.
chapter. We
Yeah. The
get a
next
Vivena
chapter is
point
where
of
we get
view.
to that point.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
chapter
The next
ends with
chapter is where we
Dedeline's
get to the
point of
point
view.
where I was going to say. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll wait till the next chapter.
All right. So the next chapter starts 2 days after chapter 1, and Ciri is already in a carriage on her way to Halandren. It's mentioned she has what she considers a large entourage of 20 honor guards, a steward, and several serving boys. It's also mentioned here that the God King has never taken a living breath, which we can refer back to how they did say that he was going to have a stillborn monster as a baby. Um, and also, living breath specifically is not capitalized, so they just mean that he's never actually breathed and not the magical breath, is what that's implying by not capitalizing
Mm-hmm.
breath. And also, she's extremely scared. So yeah, it's mentioned. I didn't say that. What
Her
do you
hair
think
going white.
Yes. What do you think the God King is, considering he was also a stillborn and is somehow returned? What does this mean of returned? Try to discuss thoughts from before reading chapter 3,
Okay.
from like
Well, yeah.
not thinking of
So
chapter 3.
I mean, I think even with chapter 3, my thoughts kind of stay the same. But
Hmm.
at the moment at least, I think he's gonna be well. Honestly, before you just said that, I didn't even have this. I didn't really have this thought until just now when you just said from this chapter.
Hmm.
That I think maybe it's a line of like they're constantly becoming like a new stillborn child, and that becomes the king, and then they do it again and again and again. And that's why the king just never seems to die. But like, I don't know, it seems like it could be a conspiracy.
You think it's potentially just like
I think
some
it's a
sort of
lie.
lie by the
Mhm.
government in
Yep,
Halandrin?
I think it's a lie. I
Mm.
think they want them to seem more powerful than they actually are. So the best way to do it would be to say, okay, well, this magical thing that we use all the time called breath, they've never taken an actual real like a human breath before,
Mm.
so they somehow that makes them seem more powerful, and so they just tell that quite a lot. And honestly, that kind of gets to me at least now, even just thinking about it, that gets ironed out a little more in next chapter too.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, at least that's my thoughts.
What do you think, Darkness? What do you think of the God King?
Um, I didn't really think too much about the fact that the stillborn child would work in that way,
Hmm.
but um, uh, from what like you just obviously discussed, um, I pretty much agree with that whole thought process that um a new God King, is it?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
A new God King is born in in that manner, but I don't really think it's a like exaggeration or a lie.
Mm.
Like I think it's generally that process.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we then switch to Vivenna's POV. Vivenna does not seem to think Ciri is going to do a good job in Halandrin. It's mentioned their father mentions that his choice was for the good of Idris and not him choosing a favorite daughter. Uh,
not true.
yeah. It's also mentioned that the war seems inevitable. At least that's the feeling that Vivenna has gotten from her father and his general.
Pretty sure
She,
he makes that in chapter 1 too.
yeah,
Pretty sure he says
yeah. I think he says to
outwardly,
Yarda.
yeah, even if we do give either daughter, even if we do give my daughter, it doesn't stop the war. It just postpones it 9 months.
Yeah, it just postpones it till a new God King is born.
Hmm.
They don't know what will happen to whichever daughter is sent to Halandrin. She then leaves and contemplates her purpose, and this is when she kind of like has that kind of parallel moment with Ciri, where Ciri before felt like she had absolutely no purpose and she was redundant, and now Vivenna feels like now that Ciri's taken her place, she's like, what was my whole life for? My whole life was for this purpose, and I feel useless and redundant now that I'm not going to be the God King's bride and the mother of the future God King. And I'm also just curious if you guys believe that their father chose Ciri purely for political reasons,
No,
or do you believe he is just choosing a favorite daughter?
I think he's just taking the troublesome daughter and shipping her off, which is idiotic and is going to bite him in the ass.
What do you think, Darkness?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Definitely shows more respect towards Viviana. Is it Viviana?
Vivenna.
Yeah,
Vivenna.
yeah. Definitely shows more respect towards Viviana because of her capabilities of like controlling her emotions. But
Yeah, I believe it's
yep.
mentioned that he seems to want to keep her because he thinks it's better for Idris to have someone like Vivenna in their in like with them uh over her being sent off and who knows what happening to her after she gives birth.
Which doesn't make sense because later on, when Vivenna is talking about the fact that if she was in the court, she could stop the war, and I
Yeah,
was
she
like,
thinks
"That's
that
the
she has
part
like a
that
lot
I'm
of
talking
political.
about." You're he,
Yeah.
yeah, the dad thinks dad seems so naive in these thoughts that like you molded your daughter to become pretty much the perfect little spy, and then you just don't care now, and you're gonna send somebody who absolutely has no like training whatsoever, like.
Yeah, so he seems kind of resigned to from based what we can see from his point of view and Vivenna's and such. It seems like he's pretty much resigned to like this war is coming no matter what,
Mhm.
and what are we gonna do in the meantime?
It's sort of like trading a Trojan horse for like a sacrifice.
Mm.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't think he saw it that way though. He just saw his favorite daughter, and was like, "I'll send the one that's troublesome, that's giving me trouble.
Yeah, also
I'll
I didn't
send
write
her
this
off."
I also didn't write this down, but we get no mention of the wife, Diddlin's wife.
Nope.
Like, do you guys have any thoughts about that? Do you think she's dead? Do you think she's left? Like, what do you think's happened potentially with
Uh,
the mom?
can we use knowledge from chapter 3 or no?
Was there something in chapter 3 about
Well,
that?
no, 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 no. But like, I mean, I could say something that I think, but it's something that
Oh, you think she might be
refers.
returned?
I, I think she's either a part of the gods in Halendrin, or she is trying. I don't know how to exactly say it without spoiling to it, but or she was food for the gods at
Mm.
one point, and she became sullen and like almost want to say colorless because that's kind of
Mm.
what they do in Idris, where they're
Mm-hmm.
just they seem to reject all color, like vibrant color, and maybe that I'm thinking maybe it was because she was food for the gods at one point and became colorless to an extent where she's just dull, and so
Mm.
everything around her needs to be dull so that keep her spirits in the same, I guess. Uh, but I mean, I'm leaning a lot more towards the god part of it, where like she got turned at one point.
Mm.
Okay. So is this a chapter where they mention about Dedeline's father?
Yes, it is mentioned that Dylan's father
Mhm.
was
Yeah.
killed 20 years ago, I believe, by the Halandrons. They slaughtered his father.
Okay. Considering that happened, um, I do think that wasn't the only reason, and that definitely something happened to his wife as well.
Mm. We do know that
Uh,
series less than like younger than 20, so something wouldn't have happened
Mhm.
at that exact same time to the mom.
yeah, but I don't know if negotiations towards the treaty
Mm.
would have taken like too like would have taken that fast, considering
Yeah.
that stuff did happen. So
Hmm.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
just like,
Vivetta, I believe, was 22. Like that
Yeah.
was when she was supposed to be sent off when she was 22.
Yeah, on her 22nd birthday, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember I have it written down. I remember him saying something to the extent of a terrible choice for a father to make. The treaty is specific. I must send Halendrin, my daughter, when Vivian reaches her 22nd birthday, but it doesn't
Hmm.
actually say which daughter I am required to send. And
Yes, and
that's
I
the
believe
part
he
that I
only
was like,
had the
you're
one
looking for
daughter
a
at the time.
loophole. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
like, you're looking for a loophole in a contract with what you assume to be godly creatures. You're, in my opinion, you're just angering them. And then later, I believe it was either later or before, he says something about if I send uh if I don't send a daughter, they'll attack immediately. If I send the wrong one, they'll be angered, but they won't attack for 9 months or whatever for
Yeah,
their
until
child to be born.
yeah.
is this also where they discuss the strategies for the war? The
Um,
getting ready to, you know.
I'm not sure. There's a little bit of war talk in chapter 3 from the new character's perspective. But
Yeah.
there's also a little bit in Daedalus and Vivenna's point of view, so I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure.
I was thinking about the like stalling until like the new season.
Oh yeah, I think they do mention yeah that like it's better to wait until winter because they're up in
Yeah,
the
Oh yeah,
they're
yeah. I do
basically
remember
up in
that.
the mountains and Haladrin's
yeah.
down in the I believe they call it the valleys or whatever.
I
Mhm.
also find that aspect interesting considering that there would be less colors to interact with regardless of where they are. If it
Mm,
does like, you know.
yeah, but they can always bring colored stuff too, Haladrin.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is Siri. We switch back then to Siri's point of view here, where she's basically yelling out her frustrations at a random guard
Red
who's
hair.
riding next to a carriage. She's just kind of like not even really expecting a response. She's just kind of like very frustrated. She also kind of just mentions the differences between the scenery, such as Idris is up in the mountains and cold, while Haladrin's seems apparently more like a lot more tropical and warm. And she also contemplates how she kind of wants to send all the men who came with her back to Idris when she's arrived, because she's like, I'm not the only one being sent to the strange land. Their families are all probably still worried about them too. So once I'm safely escorted, I should send them back. Um, so yeah, what do you think's gonna happen to those men that are sent with Ciri to Haladra? Do you think they'll be allowed to just leave? Do you think they're gonna insist on be forced to stay with her? What do you think's gonna happen with that?
I mean, I don't think they're gonna make it very far into the gate before they get murdered, but
Yeah, I
you
was thinking more of like slaughter,
think
but
they're just gonna
yeah,
get
like,
slaughtered straight up?
well, here's the thing, right? Because like I said, I play D&D, so I think of things like this as a DM. Um, like it would be very impactful on her, like impressionable to her, if you right in front of her just slaughter all 20 guards and you just say, okay, they're all dead now. You have no way to go. You have nowhere to go. You must stay
Mm,
here. Almost like showing your hand. You're showing how forceful you're going to be.
I
I think
see.
that would be. It would pretty much kind of almost impact her in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a great standing point of like making her the protagonist that I want her to be. Um, and then, I mean, when we get to chapter 3, and I get to the point where I get to see
Yeah,
who
we're
I
not
can
there just
only
yet.
imagine is adorable,
We're not there just
and
yet.
I want to be her love interest.
We got one more point of view in
Yeah, no.
chapter 2. Back to Vivenna.
Oh yeah, back to Vivenna when she was talking to her
Fafin.
sister.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we switch back to Vivenna and also Fafin. It's mentioned how they kind of explain more about Fafin's role, because they had mentioned previously she's done the family duty, becoming a monk, and it's mentioned how every noble or rich family must have one child join the monasteries. And from the little bit of information we get about what Fafin does, it sounds like monasteries aren't kind of like as much like in our world where they were kind of like sequestered up somewhere. It sounds like she basically helps people around the town
Hmm.
doing things for them. Um, and she's also, I believe, has a completely shaved head. I think it's also mentioned somewhere that she's like curvaceous. She's in between in personality to Vivenna and Ciri, but also very curvaceous apparently and gets a lot of attention. um, and it's also mentioned that it's against the five visions to be selfish, even with one's own blood. I mean, we get a little bit of implication of what they are, but what do you guys think the five visions are?
I mean, I would assume it's the monastery and like the the head of them at some point, like their creeds and their um what they live by. That's what I was trying to think of.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the
yeah.
Bible for us, for Christians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think, Darkness? Any different thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. Um Considering it does come from a religious aspect, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it just enforces the fact that it is like rules that you're supposed to go by, like sort of like the sins, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Seven deadly sins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or almost, I think there's also like virtue, so it's almost like not being
Mhm.
selfish is like potentially a virtue, or yeah, being selfish is a sin kind of thing. Yeah, it's definitely religion related. It seems like
I
they're very.
also have something to note on the fact that Fafin seems to not care as much about like her outward appearance.
Mm-hmm.
When they're picking the berries, and it specifically states that Fafin has no gloves and gets the berry juice on her hands, but Vivenna is wearing gloves so that she cannot.
Yeah, specifically
Um,
because of the
I was
color
like,
of the berry
yeah,
staining the
but
fingers.
I thought that was a nice little thing to note. The fact that she doesn't seem to care enough about getting color on her, while Vivenna does.
Mm-hmm. And then we also don't know if Fafin has the same royal hair or not because her head is completely shaved. So we don't know if
Yep.
everyone in the. It seems to be implied everyone in the family has it, but we only see Ciri, Vivenna, and their father with it so far. Um,
I also like that she calls the Fafin calls the king a lifeless monster.
yeah, I mean it seems to be kind of built into their like I like
You also believe get his name in this chapter.
yeah, I was gonna go into that after. What do you think of Fafin? Darkness Mythics kind of said what he thinks of Fafin, but what do you think of Fafin?
I really didn't put much thought into Fafin, but
Hmm.
I just thought that she wasn't more of like a scapegoat, but like a willing like person to take like a strong person because she was willing to take on that role of like um monk, is it?
Hmm.
For her family, since it is said that it was discussed that every royal family, right? Or like every like
It was every
high
noble
noble
or rich
family,
family. It's
yeah,
very much anyone with
had
money
to
or status.
had to at least have one person
Hmm.
in, yeah.
Yeah, it's considered yeah, it's as they said it's a selfless thing to do because you can't be selfish even with your own family.
Yeah.
So you have
I
to
have that. I have that
give
in
to
quotes.
the church. Hmm?
Hey, I have that in quotes. Every
Yeah.
noble or rich family was traditionally obligated to provide one person to the monastery. It was against the five visions to be selfish, even with one's own blood.
Yeah. Exactly. But Fafin
Yeah.
does seem to, from what we can, the little small section we see of her, she does seem to enjoy what she does, and she, I think, willingly, I think it was said earlier, became a monk. She seems like she enjoys being the one in the family to do that. Um, and yeah, then after, during this little point of view, we also learned the god's king's name is Susebron. And we
Which is
also,
exactly how it said in the thing.
yeah, Susebron. And we learned that the Vivenna may inherit the throne now that Ciri's the one who left instead of her brother Ridger, which does indicate that male or female can lead the country, which wasn't previously. They said, well, Ridger gets the throne, so you could have assumed
Hmm.
that it had to be male because they have a king
Yeah.
currently, and then Ridger gets the throne as the only son. But apparently, the only reason Vivenna was not going to inherit the throne, it seems, is because she was promised to the God King.
Mhm.
Um, and then
It's
Vivenna.
also noticed that Vivenna says once again. I'm pretty sure she said it once before. She says it again in this one. But it is not my if it is, but it was my place to go and marry him. That is who I am, Fafin. Without
Mhm.
it, I am nothing.
Yeah, because basically I think she was, I mean, they say that it was 20 years ago that everything was
Mhm.
created. So she was 2 years old when it was decided she was going to be married to the God King in the future. So she's her whole life just been like, this is what you're going to do with your life. This is why you need to learn these certain lessons. You need to be this and you need to be that. And her whole life has revolved around I am
Yeah.
going to be the bride of the God King and I am going to give birth to the next God King. And yet now she literally that's all she ever learned. She doesn't know anything else really besides what she needed to know to live in Haladrin and be the God King's bride. And then also the very last part of that chapter it says Vivenna decides to form a plan about what to do next. So what do you guys think Vivenna is planning on doing?
Save her sister.
Uh, I was thinking more of the lines of revenge, considering that um that sort of, how do I say it, molding at a molding someone at such a young age is definitely gonna have some sort of like psychological impact, just to like the purpose to be like ripped away is
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna affect how she views people around her, and the fact that it was her own sister taking that opportunity might impact their relationship severely.
So you think she's gonna kind of resent Siri potentially?
Yeah, like a lot.
Yeah. So you think that she wants to? Sorry, who do you think she's gonna want to get revenge on?
Um, I'm not entirely sure, but she's definitely gonna want revenge on someone.
But we can come to a consensus that me and you don't have the exact same thought pattern here, right? That
Yeah,
I think she's gonna go save Siri, and you might think that she's resenting Siri or the what Siri got that she didn't, and so
yeah.
like maybe she won't be going there as much to save her sister. But I mean, I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah,
I
so
feel
so
like
Mythic seems to think
if
that she's more going out of like a worry for her sister, and
Mhm.
Darkness you seem to think more that she's going because like she's like this was my job.
yeah,
I don't
because
like that it was taken from
um
me.
when she first found out, it definitely impacted her because she almost lost her cool. You can
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
tell because of the way her,
Her hair. Yeah.
yeah. And also not only that, but she if she doesn't resent Siri or like that whole aspect of not being able to go, she's probably gonna be able to resent her father at some point because he made the choice ultimately.
He
Mhm.
should be resented. He's an idiot.
Mythic is very against Dedalus.
Don't like him.
He's a great father.
Well, okay. When they made the comment with what was his name, his second in
Yarda?
command. Yeah,
General Yarda.
when you yeah
I
Yarda
don't
made or they made the comment about Yarda willingly would kill one of his own soldiers to win a war or to win something, and I was like, huh, that doesn't seem like a leader to me.
You think it's like
yeah.
too sacrificing, not like
Yep.
thought out enough, not strategic enough.
Yep. It doesn't seem like a good general to me.
You
Mhm.
see, there's no point if in really like um sacrificing so many things if you're gonna end up like with nothing at the end. So
Exactly.
Mhm.
I mean, I think a good leader would sacrifice themselves before they sacrifice their uh, underlings. So
Mm. Yeah. So chapter 3 starts off. I really like the way it starts off. Light Song didn't remember dying.
I love Light Song.
So we meet Light Song, who's another character. He is told that his death was inspiring, noble, grand, and heroic. Uh,
Nice.
we learn that one returns only if they died in a way that exemplifies the great virtues of human existence, and that each returned is a god and exemplifies something specific to the way they died. Lightsong is told that his death was extremely brave, but he does not remember it or any of his life from before he died, which was 5 years ago. So we meet a returned god apparently, but not the god king, named Lightsong. And so just right here, do you think Lightson has been told the truth of how he died?
No, not at
no,
all.
absolutely not.
You guys both just like absolutely.
No. You see, this is where this whole process triggers me a little because
Thank you.
the the thought of not knowing what happened before your death or anything relating to it would aggravate me and just like give me so much anxiety personally.
Yeah, like he could be
Preach,
complete.
Darkness Daddy, preach.
We don't know if he's a completely different
Because
person. He could have been a completely different person.
yep,
Like how much of your personality is your
yep,
memories and how you grew up versus just your like nature versus nurture kind of thing. Like, is this technically almost like a different person inhabiting this person's body after they died?
yeah. And you could also have been like leaving people behind that really needed you. So
Yeah, like the fact that later he thinks about a possible wife, and I was like,
mhm,
I like this man.
yep,
I mean, I like this man from the moment that he met his the priest that comes in and calls
His
him
high
Scoot.
priest. He's like
Oh,
Scoot. We'll bring
your
up
name is
Scoot
now
later.
Scoot, and this man just
yeah.
said, "All right, whatever. You're a god. I
We'll
got to
talk
do
about
it."
we'll talk about Scoot later.
God, I
But yeah,
love Scoot.
so you guys do not think that he died in an extremely brave way that is
No,
inspiring, noble, grand, and heroic. Like you don't think he like risked his life to save a baby or something.
No, I think it was the reverse.
Oh,
he killed the
okay.
baby.
No, I think he selfishly chose to try to live, and then ended up dying.
Mm. So Light Song tells
Wait,
us. Oh, go ahead.
if uh, and on that thought process that Mythic just had, um, the monastery that they have in the
Hmm.
other country, right?
Yeah, in Idris.
Um, the what is it? The five
Five visions.
yes. What if that's like there to prevent stuff like this happening?
Hmm.
Mm.
That's my thought process right now.
All right. Well, all right. So going on, Light Song tells us that there are around 2 dozen deities in the court of gods. So there's about 2 dozen of these returned gods who have no memories of their previous selves. We don't know how long they've been there for. And the God King rules over the court of gods, so it's kind of like a hierarchy. It's the God King Susebron, and then all the court of gods, and then we know that there's no lords or ladies, so it's pretty much just the gods and their priests, and then everyone is equally below them, pretty much. We also learn that he has his own palace. So he at least has his own palace, so we can assume that every god has their own palace. And he has thousands of breaths, but he cannot use awakener powers. And if he gives any of his breaths away, he will die. So unlike awakeners who can use their breaths, or I guess potentially give them away and not die, he will die if his breaths are gone. It basically seems to sustain his life. Um, so yeah, do you have any idea on why the powers of returned are different from awakeners? What are your theories on that?
I think, as I said before, that they are something. Somebody gave breath to a corpse, an object, or whatever, gave them an amount of breaths to bring them back or to bring them to life, and that much as if, in my opinion, any of those objects were to sentiently say, "Hey, I'm going to give my breath," they would have to give all of the breath back to the person that gave it to them. Kind of
Hmm.
idea.
Like collectors?
Well, kind of. I think so. Going back to the prologue with Vasher, when he took the breath back from his the straw creature,
Hmm.
it took all of it back into him, and then the creature was once again
Just
dead.
straw. Yeah.
And so, in the same aspect, I feel like either it's the God King or it's somebody else that has an amount of breaths, and they give those breaths to these awakened or the not awakeners but the gods, and then they become gods. They become the people who are like above everybody, and then we haven't gotten there yet, but I do like the thing that they have to do to continue to remain alive. That
Yeah, to
was,
remain alive.
yeah, that's really interesting to me.
What about you, Darkness?
I I'm not. I have like no idea what I like. What could they be in general?
Hmm?
Like I have no idea what they could be in general, but I do know that it is like more costly to be
Returned.
is what is it? Huh?
A
Returned.
return.
Yeah, a return. There you go. It is more costly to be a return than just a freshly awakened person.
An awakener.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So then we meet Larimar, which is Lightsong's head priest, and who Lightsong quickly nicknames Scoot, even though they have known each other for 5 years apparently. But he decided after 5 years he's going to nickname him Scoot. He's dressed in robes, which is the same color as the room Lightsong is in, which is red and gold, which seem to be the colors that represent him as a god. He's, I guess, a Gryffindor. He's a brave Lightsong.
Real
Gryffindor
quick,
colors.
real quick, Midnight,
Yep.
because I don't know if I think this came before. It also explains that he has like an innate ability that around him. I believe this is when before the breath tells you about him having thousands of breaths, but where like all of the color that's around him, just when he enters a room, just becomes brighter and is like stronger.
Yeah, so it does
Um,
mention that a
called
bit
it
with
called it
Vasher.
called it his biochroma. Yeah.
Yeah, his biochromatic aura, which I believe is briefly mentioned with Vasher as well, which basically um, it based on what we've seen with Vasher is when he has a few breaths, there's barely any change in the colors around him based on his aura. But when he gets more breaths from Var, things are even like he gets more. So it seems to be that the more breaths you have, the more your aura changes colors around you, and the bigger this biochromatic aura is.
Yeah, that's because I thought it was pretty neat that, like,
Hmm.
when later in the thing when he's doing things, that it gets really cool. It gives a lot of details, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it also gives away who has large supplies of breath,
Right?
which is very interesting. Yeah. Um, all right, but yeah, so yeah, Gryffindor, red and gold for
Gryffindor.
Light Song the Brave, which I kind of I actually only just picked that up just now. I was while we were doing this. Um, but yeah, so he represents that. Lalamar then has Light Song describe his dreams from the night before, where he talks about how his dream is walking along a beach of brown sand with a red boat leaving without him into the water, and that the ocean also seems to be red, just like the boat. So, what do you think of Light Song's dream? Do you think it means anything? Do you think it doesn't mean anything?
Um, I personally, when I first read that, thought that it was definitely some sort of like prophetic, like seeing or like you know visions. Um,
Hmm.
because of how much they were pushing to write down the dream, no matter how minimal he thinks it is. Like how,
Yeah, Lalamar and the priest definitely seem to think that he has prophetic dreams, and they're very intent
yeah.
on writing those down. But yeah, I'm just wondering if you think they're prophetic, or do you think that's just a superstition
I
or like a
personally think
thought
they,
because they're gods?
yeah, they are, in my opinion.
Hmm.
There's no way that much magic is gonna reside in someone not gonna have extraordinary like side effects.
Mm.
So I have a slightly different thought.
Okay.
I think he was. I thought when I originally read it, I thought he was BSing about his dream. I thought he was just giving Scoot, because I'm gonna call this man Scoot. I thought he was just giving Scoot something he wanted to hear
Yeah.
until later in the thing. Then it kind of makes more sense of it being, I guess, prophetic.
Yeah.
Um, I also wrote down that his what he said was the sound was brown, of course. The trees were green, and for some reason, I think the ocean water was red, like the ship. And I was like, that just right there tells seemed to tell me that it was like he didn't really like dream this, or he was just
Mm.
making it up. But then later, when you find he later kind of shows differently. But
Yeah. And we do find out a little bit about his personality, where he does seem to take some of his duties seriously, even if he doesn't think the whole thing's that interesting. He's like, okay, I'll
he
kind of be
doesn't
serious with
believe in
this.
his own
Yes,
religion.
I was going to mention that later. Is he does not
Oh
believe
my
in his own religion.
god!
He's just like, yeah, you say I'm a god, but like, I don't have prophetic dreams. I don't have anything special. I'm for some reason ageless and returned, but I'm not actually like that, like
And
magical and
then
special otherwise.
I'm pretty sure later he also, because the once again going on the BS line of he says something like, "Yeah, you were there too, Scoot. You were doing a dance
Yeah.
or something," and I was
Mhm.
like, this man is just
Yeah, he
like,"
just
and he
makes
wrote
that
it
up
down.
after. And then he's like,
Yeah, he's
and then he realizes that he's like, oh, you're being
yeah.
stupid. Yeah, because
I was
Scoot at
like,
first is like,
that's
I was.
oh god, Scoot and him are just so great together.
Yeah.
Now that we did discuss the dreams, I'm kind of thinking, what if it was like memories, you know?
You think
Mm,
maybe instead of it being like a prophecy for the future, it could be like a memory
Yeah,
that
like
that
the
he's having.
would make
subconscious,
sense.
the
Would make
subconscious
sense for
memory of
later
like,
too.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. But yeah, actually, my next sentence was, it is mentioned Lightsong does not believe in his own religion.
Yeah.
That was apparently
What?
my next slide written
Oh
down.
no.
Why though? Like, man, I'm a god and I don't even believe in myself.
Honestly,
I
I
really
feel like
like
I
that
would feel the
aspect though.
same if I was in his position.
Midnight, you are a god. Shush.
But yeah, so they leave Light Song's room, and it's also mentioned that apparently his whole palace is rooms connected to rooms. Hallways are only for servants. Priests and gods apparently do not ever walk in hallways. It's not a thing. They just have rooms that connect to rooms, and that the hallways are
That's
kind of running along the outside of the building. But yeah, only for servants. Absolutely no one else uses them. And then
Tell
yes,
me you wouldn't like that darkness. Tell
I
me.
I actually want to see how the like the architecture, like the structures look in that
like
like
a floor plan.
form. Yeah, like I'm
It
trying to picture
would
it
be
and it's so
wouldn't be
difficult to
terrible.
me.
It wouldn't be terrible. Have you ever seen like
It's like a Sims
hotel
house where
rooms?
you just don't
Yeah.
go
Oh well.
hallways.
Yeah. But
That's better.
Yeah, that's what I
But
yeah.
imagine. It's just
Right.
like I never make hallways in my
I
Sims houses.
I I think about it like like the hamster tubes.
Yeah.
That's how I think about it.
I almost
Just
think it
walk
also is
into a
like
hamster tube.
I also almost think
Yeah,
of it
for
like
the
as an
servants.
apartment buildings. Like a lot of times with like small apartments, like everything just connects to the living room. You don't really have a hallway because don't
Yeah.
want to waste square footage on a hallway. So it's just everything that connects to the main room. That's how I
Exactly.
imagine it.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. That like it's just you have one hallway and then they just put a bunch of rooms on the sides of it. But like then but they talked about this being a temple though.
It's a palace, yeah. So it is quite
A
large. So it,
palace. Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it is. I guess you could also consider a temple. It's the home of a god, technically. Um, but yeah, they do. Yeah, it does sound like it's probably very large, but it's just yeah, room and then room and then room. So probably more instead of like hallways, I guess you would have like sitting rooms in between, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, so that was an interesting thing I just found. And then they enter a room in the center of the palace, apparently, which is decorated by the true colors. So it's not just red and gold; it has the true colors, which apparently only I believe it's mentioned that only people with like the being able to see perfect hues can tell what a true color is.
Yeah, he says later that he could tell if a red is exact red or if there was any white included
Yeah,
into it.
which is one of the heightenings. I don't remember. I think it might be the third. I don't remember if
Third.
they mention. Yeah.
Yeah, it's third. I
Yeah.
wrote that down.
Yeah, so it's the third heightening where second is perfect pitch, third is perfect hues. You can see the
Color. Yeah.
yeah, you can see perfect colors. And yeah, in this room in the center of the palace, there is a child, a young girl who
Uh,
gives her breath to Lightsong. It's explained that returned need a new breath every week to stay alive, and that some returned do not become gods as they live too far away and don't get breaths within the first week, and so they die again. It's also explained that all returned get dreams that are considered visions and used for divinations of the future. And we're also told that people without breath are called, they have a few names, they're called drabbed or dull or faded one. I think it's also mentioned that he's very upset that they always seem to bring him children
but
as the people
I'm
to give him
wondering
breath.
though if that is intentional.
Yeah, so I was going to ask
If
partially about that.
children is the reasoning.
So, what do you think about Returned having to take breath once a week? And also, why do you think they always bring children?
Well, I think they bring children because something about probably about purity, but other than that, light song, you can take my breath anytime.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no. Um, personally, I didn't look into the fact that it was a child too much. I did notice that obviously he didn't like that it was a child,
Yeah, I think he makes a
and
very
that
passing comment that he's like, why is it always children?
yeah, and that yeah, that it's always children. I was more into the fact that if they didn't get breaths like that, they would die
Hmm.
off. So obviously, there's not too much of a sense of immortality in the god, aspect.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was
Um,
here or later, but I believe um, I've just lost my thought completely. Um, I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, it's mentioned that they are ageless, I believe, at some point in
Yes,
Lightsong's
it's
yeah,
in this one.
chapter.
Yeah.
So they basically they don't age. I don't believe they need to eat.
Nope. Yeah, he says something about it. It's
Yeah.
just
So
uh
basically they don't need to do like human things. But
'cause they're
it seems the
dead.
breasts, yeah, the breasts seem to sustain them, but they seem to almost like you like it seems like they contain them, but they also use up some of that power within a week's time because you'll die within a
it
week.
it does make sense that if they are dead, for them to need breaths,
Right.
because
Hmm.
they need
But
to breathe
also,
to live.
a question I didn't think to ask about was like he says he holds thousands of breaths, and that's why he's at certain heightenings, and he can make the colors like really
Why
like his aura is huge. But so
why can't he use it?
it says
Like
returned
his
cannot
own?
use their breath. They can't wield
Yeah,
things. But like it said that he has thousands, but like he's obviously using part of it to stay alive because he'll die within a week. But he still has thousands, so he's not using it up completely. So what do you think
yeah.
that means? Like in regards to the fact that he somehow has the breath still because it's accumulating, but also he's using it up somehow, part of it.
I mean, it still goes back to the whole thing I thought about immuning your breath into objects. So
Mm.
I feel like somebody immune breath into him, and then over time, like I don't because it doesn't explain to the with Vasher didn't explain how long an object can retain breath. So like
Yeah,
because
they
he
have
pretty
not gone
much
into that yet.
sent yeah he sent it out, it came back, and then he took it from it like almost like in that
Yeah, we
span.
don't know if there's a
So
time limit or not.
I mean, I do remember Vasher also put his breath into something else,
His cloak, I
cloak or
believe it
something.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
I don't remember anything saying that he took it from that. So
But we also don't we only see him for probably who knows how long he's in there, like half an hour.
Yeah,
We don't know
exactly.
if he takes it off, like off page later.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Um,
I
so yeah,
do. I do remember. I have it quoted of him saying, "Most people say they can't even tell their breath is gone. She'll live a full life, happy. Her family will be well paid for her sacrifice." I bolded that part. Her
yeah,
family will be well paid. I'm wondering, is it another? Is it a deal? A lot like the contract that was written with Idris that
yeah. So it seems like they pay the
these families are supposed to
families.
sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like they pay the families for the
I
breath of their children. We don't know if that means they're necessarily poor or if people. I mean, everyone kind of just wants money generally. So
I was thinking more of the like that it was more of like the monastery.
you think it might be
Mm,
people, very
Yeah,
religious people, that send their children?
yeah, yeah. I feel like
possibly.
if you feel like you worship that person, then you're obviously gonna send somebody from your own family to prove that point. You know?
Like it
Okay.
might almost be like an
Uh,
honor to have your child give their
yeah.
Yeah,
breath to the
and
specific
I
god.
don't think it's like oh, if you send someone, I'm definitely gonna have to like reward you for it. I feel like he's doing that because he feels like slightly bad taking
Oh, so
that.
do you think light songs, like maybe not every person who gives breath to a god does get rewarded, or you think it's just
Yeah,
something light song does?
yeah, I think it's just something he does.
Okay.
Possibly. What was?
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't think we know
I
any of the
mean,
other gods yet, so.
yeah, exactly. Coming from because I also, like I said before, I read it as I listen to it.
Mhm.
And I remember distinctly that because the person that's on the Audible thing does like voice kind of, they slightly shift their voice. And it makes me believe that they probably read the whole book before.
Mm.
But when they said the child's line of "My life to yours, my breath becomes yours,"
Mhm.
they were much more like, with when they did with Var, it was a lot more like, direct. And with hers, they even like they put that shaky voice in there, and it almost seemed as if like she didn't want to do it. She
Mm.
was not forced, because you can't be forced apparently, but
Yeah.
like kind of coerced heavily
Yeah.
of, this is your honor to do this. And then, she didn't really want to do it, but she did it
Yeah.
anyways.
I mean, it's
And
also
so that kind of
potential.
makes me think of that.
Yeah, so either she's coerced or also she might not fully understand what it means. We don't know
Hmm.
how young
Yeah,
is young. Like she could have been like a 4 or 5 year old who just is
I
scared
was
in a new
thinking that.
place without her parents.
I mean, yeah, I mean, she has to be somewhat small, because I remember them making a comment about Light Song's large hands.
Well, he also does mention, I believe, that he's quite a bit larger even than
Foot.
Larimar. Like
Yeah,
he towers over
they
Says
did.
a
him.
foot tall. It says he's a foot taller than Scoot.
Yeah.
They did have to accommodate for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's just
Like
apparently
the
quite gigantic. He's like fucking 7 feet tall or something. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so he's apparently just also just quite tall. Which yeah, I guess if they had to accommodate for him, it might not be just a return thing. It might just be him before as a person
you
was
know
just a very tall person.
that means if you became a god, you'd be almost normal height.
Wow.
I mean, that's only if they get bigger when,
Yeah.
they become a
Yeah,
god.
I was trying to
Like,
say they don't
if
become
they
bigger
if
because
they yeah if they stay the same, she'd probably be the shortest god. So
thank you guys. Thank you. But
I mean,
yeah,
she's only like what, 4'2".
I am 4'11". But anyway, so then Light saw next after getting his weekly breath. He goes into a new room where he is assessing paintings and I think also there's poetry, just works of
Ah,
art.
yes.
Apparently, his interpretations of paintings either good give can get get sorry can give good or ill fortunes to people about what they think they want brave things they want bravery on because that's why they would send to him versus another god because he is bravery. And so yeah, it's good to get a blessing on these art pieces from a god. This is when we learned that the third heightening gives you the ability to see perfect hues of color. We also learned that the returned are of the fifth heightening. So all returned are fifth heightening. I don't believe we get told what fourth or fifth heightenings do for you, but that is what they are. And then after, so he looks at the art, and after the offerings, Lightsong mentions petitions, but we do not get to know what they do with petitions, as they are apparently halted for the day due to Ciri arriving in Haladrin. We learn that of the returned, only the God King is allowed to get married, and that he is also the only one able to produce children. None of the other gods are allowed to be married, and none of them are able to. I guess they're all infertile as well. So yeah, what do you think of the offerings? It was, I believe, there was a poem with colored dots.
This is where you come to the picture that he or the painting of the ship that
Yeah.
he
Well, it's an abstract
marks
piece that he
to his thing.
feels. Yeah, it's an
Yep.
abstract piece, I believe, mostly all in red because it's one of his colors, and he feels like he can
Mhm.
almost see the Red Sea and the red boat in it.
Yeah, and that's where I started thinking that kind of actually when I originally thought was that that's where I thought, oh, okay, maybe he is prophetic.
Mm.
And then until just now, or before when Darkness said about maybe it's a vision of his
Memory.
past, yeah, like that makes a lot more sense because then later in this thing, talking about a woman that
Yeah, I think we'll
apparently
get
he
into
could
that.
vividly remember. So maybe it is. I think Darkness might be onto something there.
Yeah. Do you think then the abstract piece is actually supposed to represent that? Is it someone he knows who potentially said that, or is it just happened? It's just him remembering again
I think
his
it's just
dream?
him remembering.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm just also briefly curious. What do you guys think of the artist script of the different little colors that represent letters?
What? I'm confused. What we?
Uh, was that not in this one? I
I
think
don't know.
they that he looks at a first painting, and then I thought he looked at a poem, and then he
Oh,
looked at
oh, oh, oh! You're talking. Okay,
Yeah.
you're talking about with the poem,
yeah the
with the
poem.
poem, and
I believe it's in the
it's like
artist script.
random. Yeah,
It's called.
it's a different script. I remember now
Yeah.
what you're talking about. I didn't actually write that down.
Yeah, I was
No,
like,
I
for a
guess it
second, I
just
was
didn't
like, did I
seem.
get ahead of
Yeah.
myself?
No, I guess it just to me it didn't seem as if it
It's
was.
not very important. I'm just kind of curious if
Yeah.
what you
Oh,
thought
that's what I'm
about
saying.
it.
Maybe I think that's why I didn't write it down because I didn't think it was as like standoff or stand out ish. Like
There there was a painting before the ship, right?
Yeah, there was
yeah,
a an
yeah.
original painting which I think he believes that it's potentially done by a professional. I believe he says that people sometimes will pay artists to
Yeah.
make the work for them, and I think
That was
he's
burnt.
less interested in those. He or something.
Yeah.
I'm not remembering. And then yeah, there's the
That was burnt,
poem which
right?
he says was obviously transcribed into the artist script by someone because it's simpler and someone who just normally writes in the artist script would make it like fancier and almost make a picture out of this
Mhm.
the poem. And then yeah, there's the abstract piece which he mentions. He had once commented very highly on an abstract piece, so now people tend to send him those.
Yeah.
So that first picture, that first what is it? Painting?
Anything?
Mhm.
That first painting was burnt, right?
So all of the works of art get burnt. So apparently
Yeah,
All of
he
them?
yeah,
assesses them.
Regardless?
yes.
All of the art
Uh,
pieces that
Okay.
get sent to him for
Okay.
offerings. So how the offerings work is, if you apparently want a blessing or like a good fortune from a god, you depending on what you want good fortune on, you send an art piece, be it a painting or a drawing or a poem in the artist script, and you send it to a god of whatever virtue you need help with. So in his case, bravery. I'm sure there's other ones. So like I think he says it's like you want like bravery to propose to someone potentially or to ask someone out. You would send
Mm,
them a piece of work. I think usually it sounds like you're supposed to do it yourself, but some people hire artists to do it for them because they want it to get favorable reviews. And their review is written down, whatever the god says about your piece of artwork, and then the piece is burnt because in a
because
fire.
only gods can see it.
Only the gods and their high priests are supposed to see this offering. It's only for their eyes.
I
I'm
love that.
surprised. I'm surprised there isn't a form of like rejection to offerings.
Well, it sounds
There
like
might
he
be.
can give. I believe it's very, very briefly mentioned that like you can give good or ill, almost responses, but I believe he doesn't seem to want to ever give like a fully negative
Okay. Fair. Yeah.
response. He seems to like try. He's as I said, like he seems to take this pretty seriously, even though it bores him.
Mm-hmm.
He tends to take his offerings very seriously and try and even I think he says even at the last one, like even though he's tired, he wants to try and give like a proper response instead of just being like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, whatever.
I'm assuming that also comes from the fact that he feels the need to give something back, considering that they are giving him breaths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then yeah, what do you think petitions are? We don't get anything, but I mean, just based on the word petition, what do you think
I
his duty
petition the
is?
court.
But like, what do you think?
um,
Like, they specifically petition. Like, what do you think he's supposed to do? Type thing for
I think it's
petitions.
people come to ask him for things, but
Hmm.
that's what I was thinking. More of like actual petitions, but like in like the sense of like what people need.
Yeah. Do you think he's able to give like? Do you think it's money, resources, or does he just give advice? Like, what is his
Uh,
job there?
I didn't get too much into that because I don't really know the
Because we didn't
full
get to do it.
extent.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because we didn't get to
Yeah,
do it.
Yeah,
But
we don't get anything. I was just curious what you guys saw because yeah, they're halted for today. We'll potentially get to see what petitions are later. So I was just curious what
yeah.
if you had
I
any
think
thoughts.
people just come in and like ask for stuff, and I feel like it's not like one person thing, like a personal thing, because
Mm,
it is a petition, and the personal things are the paintings. So
so you think it's more like a group, like a people maybe
yes, uh-huh.
come and like ask a god for something.
Hmm.
I think he also says he like didn't want to do them anyway, so he's pretty happy that they're
yeah, he
halted.
said the least they're the least appealing of the day.
Yeah, which is surprising considering he really seems to hate taking the breasts from the kid.
And going into the art, he says, but
Yeah.
he just doesn't. He just wants to
Just
nap. Is what it seems like.
yeah,
Yeah, he
being
pretty much
God in
does.
general.
I mean, he doesn't
I
believe in
feel
his
like this is
religion.
darkness.
He doesn't
I feel
believe in
like
his
this is
religion. He's just
darkness.
like, this is stupid.
This is darkness as a god. Darkness died, and now they became light song.
So yeah, so after that, Light Song has to give his head priest a command for his lifeless, because he asks for some lifeless
Oh
for
yeah.
to greet, uh, I guess, Siri into the city. Apparently, there's a lot of commands for all sorts of different things. He specifically gives a
Hmm.
command for, I believe it's non-violent. It's a non-violent command,
Hmm.
I believe is specified. And we also learn that.
This
Hmm?
sorry, I was gonna say this is like the second like most like attention pulling aspect of the magic for me. Like
Mm,
my second most favorite part because it gives more context into commands and how the what are they called?
lifeless.
Lifeless.
The lifeless, yeah, how they work.
Mm-hmm.
And also the fact that he said it wasn't like the central command, like the main one, the main phrase.
Yeah, there's like a
So I'm
main
assuming,
phrase and then tons of it sounds like little tiny phrases for very specific
yeah,
situations.
I'm assuming that main phrase can override most of whatever is put out there.
Mm.
Yeah, I have it quoted on my in my notes with the Your Grace. I'm going to put Scoot. Scoot said, "We will need a lifeless command in order to arrange our troops in the field outside the city to welcome the Queen." And then his oh, I loved it. It raises an eyebrow. We plan to attack her.
I love that. I love that so much.
It was like, yes, please.
Yeah, he does say it's specifically a non-violent command. So does that
Yeah.
change your idea of whether they're going to attack, or do you think maybe just his will be non-violent? Because it does say that he's only one of 4 gods that have lifeless commands. So there are 3 other gods potentially who have lifeless
Mhm.
commands, and we don't know what sort of commands they've given out.
It also makes me wonder, why does he have lifeless commands? Like,
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't know why he was
what
chosen.
yeah, what gives him the ability? And also, I mean, did he have to learn this? Did he have to learn each command, or did he become like make the commands?
Hmm.
Because I believe the command was like something fruit.
Yeah, it was
Maybe,
I don't remember.
maybe it's instinctual.
Let me go
Just seemed
back.
really weird to me.
It is curious now what the command was again. Um, oh, that's too far forward. Just trying to.
Fledgling fruit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
For some
fledgling
reason,
fruit.
for some reason, it reminded me of peaches.
And now that I'm looking back at it, another thing that I just now noticed, fledgling is uppercase and fruit is not. So maybe fledgling is like
A thing.
much stronger part of that.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, it does say that it was a non-combat command.
Yes.
So maybe they won't attack. But I mean, is he the only one sending lifeless? This is going to be the
Yeah, we
question.
don't know because he does mention that there's
Yeah.
four out of the like we know there's probably he says at least 2 dozen, around 2 dozen deities. So of like 24, there are only 4 of them who have lifeless commands, and we don't know who the other 3 are.
Mhm.
So we don't know if they could give other commands or if they're all told that it should just be it's a welcoming, so it's all going to be non-violent, non-combative commands. We're
I wonder
not
if that's
sure.
including the God King.
Yeah, we don't know if
Uh,
I feel like the way it's implied is that it doesn't include the God King. He might have his own army. I think the way he's saying gods is he means the of the 2 dozen, but
Okay.
I don't it doesn't specifically specify, so I'm not sure. 'Cause yeah, he's considered like above them, not on the court of
Mm.
gods. Um, but yeah, so there's that, and then Lightsong describes a woman he believes he
I
remembers
have all the notes for this.
and wonders if that was his wife previously. The priests write down what he says briefly, and then he goes out to the deck to watch for the new queen. Did you want to say anything then, Mythic, about the
Oh, I have so
wife
many notes. I have
friend?
an entire page, but I'm
Okay,
gonna
here we
only
go.
go through a bit of them.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So the first thing I noticed with it was when he asked, "Did I have a wife before I died?" Uh, Scoot says that he cannot speak of his life before he was returned,
Yeah, so they're apparently not allowed to
meaning
say
to
anything about it.
but to me it seemed almost as if maybe Scoot knows who
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
he was beforehand, and because they can't speak of it, maybe it'll send the gods or whatever, giving them memories of their past would create an issue. But so they're like almost sworn to secrecy, but they still have the knowledge.
mm,
The other thing I wrote down was as he was jotting it down, he says, I have a beautiful, youthful face, inviting brown hair, red lips, 3 shades shy of the seventh harmonic. I have the seventh harmonic in like bold, and
mm-hmm,
then with a deep beauty, dark tan skin. And it kind of made me think that this is where I started getting the ship idea of,
mm.
and I have it in fucking bold, italicized that says, is Siri going to be his wife?
Oh, you think Siri's gonna be his wife?
His old wife, or something to that extent. Because like I fully don't believe that they're like I think they're what's the word can't think of the word they're telling him one thing but it's really not the truth so that he'll think a certain way.
Mm,
They're
um
molding him. They're
yeah, but there's like it's not brainwashing but it's like uh it's a coercion.
is it
mm.
called?
um
Does grooming count?
yeah, I mean,
I mean, I think grooming is technically can also be used in like the non-sexual, creepy way.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I think they're molding him to be something that he wasn't before.
Mm,
And maybe he actually isn't as dead as he thinks he is, or like it wasn't as long ago, or something to that extent. Maybe they told him 5 years, but really it wasn't. Maybe,
mm.
because time is very easy to like tell somebody something and not be true.
Yeah, and we
Especially
also,
if they're like,
if they're in a tropical place, like we don't know if they have seasons potentially that change
Mhm.
as well.
also, um, he is ageless, right? So
Yeah.
Yes, he doesn't
time is
age.
definitely gonna work a little different there.
So you think they're
I
completely
also,
lying to him about like how long
yeah.
he's been a god and all
Mhm.
sorts of things.
And then also I wrote down that Scoot scribbles it down, but does not ask for anything more,
Hmm.
which is weird because from before, when it was the dream, he was pressing him for
Yeah,
details. But
that's
then
I noticed
when
that.
he's speaking of something that could be about his past, he writes it down. I don't think it said he wrote exact, like it wasn't like he was jotting it down perfectly. It just says he was scribbling something.
Yeah, I believe they do
Um,
say though that they write down everything Light Song
does it?
says. Yeah, I don't. Maybe it wasn't in this chapter. Maybe it's in a different chapter. But I believe they do write down everything that he says in general.
I believe it said, but I
Yeah.
thought when he was speaking about it, it didn't say that he wrote it down. Like it
Well,
wasn't like
I don't think
specific. You know what
Scoot
I'm saying?
always writes things down. I think there's other priests they mention briefly
Maybe. Yeah.
in the area, which I think are always writing stuff down. And so yeah, it might be significant that Scoot is specifically writing that down versus one of the random other priests that are following them.
I also wonder where this goes.
Mm.
Like everything that he writes down. Like I
Yeah,
wonder
who
if it
sees
also
it?
gets yeah, like I would also wonder if it gets like reviewed to make sure. Like what if it's like actual like trying to manipulate a person and they're trying to keep it in check by getting that reviewed by someone else who is like, part of
Mm.
that.
Do you think they're like trying to not just like write down because he's a god, but like keep tabs on him and try and like
Yeah,
push
like
him in certain
surveillance.
ways? Like, oh, he's talking
Yeah.
about this now. We should try and like put him in a different
Steer him
direction.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like because it definitely sounds like it could be that way. It's like, oh, he's having a vision of
Yeah.
the ship, so maybe we need to like he's touching too close to home where he was dead,
Yeah.
how he died. We need to like veer him off of this path somehow. So they
Mm-hmm.
come together as a collective and they say, "Hey, what are we gonna do?" Or he's having this vision of or he sees this image of a woman that we know who this woman is. We have to like steer him off of this. We have to get
Yeah.
him to not think about it, kind of idea. Because like it definitely seems as though like Scoot doesn't seem to have much of a personality outside the uh, outside his scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just seems like he's there to serve. Last thing I wrote though, Light Song goes to see his soon-to-be wife.
Yeah,
I'll
he's
put that
like
as one of your
really.
predictions. Mythic thinks
I'm
Light
shipping them.
Song. Mythic thinks
Siri and Siri and Light Song forever.
Light Song and Siri will marry. Because I want to write down anything that you guys kind of like think is gonna happen. I'm gonna go more into after we when we do like I'm gonna do like a little overview in a second. But I'm gonna try and keep track of what things you guys think are gonna happen in the future of the book, and then as they come up, I'm gonna be like, well, you predicted this. You were right or wrong or half wrong or like
Yeah, I
it's kind
mean,
of half answered.
I definitely think that something's gonna happen. Siri's gonna come in, not knowing anything about the court. She's gonna be needing somebody to help guide her through it, and I think Lightsong is gonna be there for that. And then
Mm,
if my hope is correct, they'll become involved or not. Like whether it be a romantic thing or actually just more like a sibling thing, but like they're gonna be
like a
involved in some
mentor.
way. Yeah, and they're gonna be involved in some way, and then like something's going to happen where it's like he has to either go against the other gods or he has to like sneak away for her to do something like I just feel
Mm.
like he's going to have a big part in her coming here,
All right. Well, we're gonna get into
but I definitely
predictions
think they did it.
more in a second. I just want to do like a quick the end of this chapter before we do the overview. What's your general opinion of Light Song? What's your general opinion of Larimar, aka Scoot?
We all know what my thought is on Light Song.
Um,
Daddy.
I love Light Song. Great
Mm,
character. I love the aspect of not just like centralizing yourself on becoming a god, but also like doubting it,
mm,
and all the facts, and the fact that he takes time out of just like taking instead of like, I mean he takes time out just to like give back instead of just taking.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, great character. Um, Scoot, I'm gonna call him Scoot is
Yeah,
easier.
Scoot.
Scoot personally don't really like him that much.
Mm,
Um, I feel like they're that type of person to be sort of a pushover if it gets them the information they need.
mm. I think
Yeah,
Mythic
that's
likes
pretty much
Scoot,
it.
right?
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but I think that Scoot has more to offer. I think Scoot will be much better later.
Like
I feel
betrayal.
like they're gonna. I feel like Scoot is trying to keep up a mask to make it look as if he is like this serving person,
Mm,
because he doesn't maybe he doesn't know of Light Song is going to be also a rebel or anything like that.
mm-hmm,
He's like trying to keep like a keep far enough back so that he doesn't put the spotlight on him.
mm-hmm,
Um, just for the way that like he seems to like treat him as if he is a god, but also kind of is like guiding him down like in all the places he needs to go. Like,
Hmm.
I believe when they originally was thinking that he has to go to the petitions or whatever,
mm-hmm,
um, is he says it, and then Scoot is like, "No, don't you remember?" And like even though I'm pretty sure it stated something like, even though he's a god, I can't say he couldn't say it to him. Like he couldn't say it judgmentally. He had to like be like, "Hey, don't
yeah,
you remember
there's
this?"
certain
kind
things
of thing.
expected of him.
Yeah,
Wait,
and
Obviously, as
so
he's obviously expected to respect Lights On. He is the head priest of that's his
mhm.
god basically,
that's
like
that's
god in physical
uh-huh.
form. And then like there's
That's
other priests around to judge him if he doesn't act respectfully potentially.
that's that's actually give me a different like sort of view right now.
Mm,
Um, what dictates what he's supposed to do as his own like person as a god? Because if he can't remember his own like um standards, of what he's supposed to do
Mm.
as his religion, and if he
Mhm.
doesn't believe in it, how do the priests know what he's supposed to do?
Well, I think it's I don't know if it's really
Like,
implied, but it's not a spoiler. But like I think every god has to do. They get their weekly breath. They have to do offerings, which are the paintings and petitions.
yeah, but I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do it in his own way. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
they're trying to push him to do it in like a specific way, and I feel like not every god is gonna be like doing it that same way either.
yeah. We'll have to see if you guys ever meet any of the other gods.
I already know we do, but yeah.
What do you mean
I'm
you already
next.
know we do?
Well, because I wanted to know what Light Song looked like.
What?
Oh my
No
god,
Googling things. You guys are gonna get way so many spoilers. No
I forgot you
Googling.
can Google stuff.
No Googling.
All right, I'll be back. I'm gonna Google it.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely no.
Light Song.
No
Look,
Googling is allowed.
Light Song, Daddy. Light Song,
No
Daddy.
Googling is allowed.
Okay, no,
I'm
Anyways.
but I
good.
mean, I did. I Google imaged just to see what he looked like, and I looked at the first two images, and one of them he's standing with a girl. I have no idea who they are, but he's standing with a girl, and it seemed either it's going to be my ship being correct, or
Oh
it's going to
my
be
god.
yeah, or it's going to be the fact that there's another god, possibly. So I just thought of it, but like even before that, I mean, they said they have 2 dozen gods. There has to
Yes.
be, you know, there has to be a
I
showing
mean,
of at
yeah,
least
Yeah,
it's
one.
based
for
on the
sure.
fact that we've gotten a point of view. Like, it's pretty obvious that Light Song's gonna be one of the main characters, and so like it's gonna be unlikely he doesn't interact. I think with any of the other gods. I think it's not really a spoiler to say like it's pretty impossible that he's just gonna stay in his palace for the whole book.
Exactly.
So,
So next we have 4 to 11, right? No, I'm just kidding. So read the
well,
whole
okay,
book.
I'm gonna do some little overview questions. So, my first question is, what do you think the title Warbreaker means?
I mean, my thought is that it's going to be something to the extent of like, uh, Siri is being sent here. She's going to break the war, as in make it so it doesn't happen.
Okay.
Well, if it's in this like literal sense, the war has to happen before it gets broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
So you
before it
think
gets
yeah,
you
stopped.
think
But
yeah, it means that a war will happen, like Dedalus
like
has
regardless of
predicted.
what's happening, it's
It's just
gonna
gonna stop
happen.
it.
But
I
it's
feel
gonna
like the
be
war's
stopped.
already here. I feel
um,
like they're already in the war because, like he said, we're not going to get out of it, kind of idea. Like we can't, uh, like it's
yeah,
inevitable. So I feel like they're already technically in the war. They're just not having a battle yet. So
they're in the pregame, in the pregame
yeah,
block.
they're pre-gaming this.
So you think it's basically like they've already just like Haladrin's already decided there is a war. We just haven't set the
Yeah.
troops yet. Yeah. We're
Hmm.
gonna wait for our queen to get here, lock her up so she can give birth, and then we'll send the troops once she's
Oh
in our
God, that just gave me so
I,
many
I,
answers.
yeah, me too. I instantly
Thanks,
shackled came
darkness.
to mind.
Yeah,
shackled
shackles
like
and
Bar.
bondage. And,
The
oh
torture
God,
room.
Like Bar, yeah, they're gonna stick her in the cell in the dungeon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
just throw her in the cell,
Just like
lock her up so her legs are up, and be like, all right, 9 months later, we'll wait.
a solid cement slab.
He's
Just like
gonna be stillborn anyways. We don't care about his health of the god.
you're right. You're right.
Don't worry, we'll bring you back, and then yeah, you can have the kid. Bye bye.
Oh,
All
great,
right.
another soldier.
All right. So my next question is, do you think Vasher will? I think we kind of talked about this a little bit. Do you think Vasher will end up being a main character like Siri in Light Song? And how do you
Um,
think he'll relate to the story if he does, is a main character, or even if he isn't?
I just think he's gonna be a mentor.
Mentor to Siri, you think?
Yeah,
what if it turns out that he's gonna be a mentor to like Light Song?
I
Oh, you
mean,
think
could be. I
Vasher,
mean,
yeah, mentor to Light Song?
I mean,
Because
either
like, I
either
mean,
that, or because he did state before that he had many more breaths before.
yeah,
Maybe he was like Light Song. Maybe they're lying to him about the fact that they can't use them as a what is it, awakener. And so nobody tries it.
if
Okay.
maybe there's a way to reverse it. The
Like, go
becoming
remember your
a
memories and
return.
All right,
basically
Midnight,
be a
put this
normal
down. Put this
awakener.
down. Here's my
Oh,
idea.
here we
Here's
go.
my
Here we go. Okay.
prophecy on what it
Okay.
is.
Okay.
Ready? I think Vasher is one of these 2 dozen gods
Yes,
Oh,
I feel
is
like it was reversed somehow.
currently one of the 2 dozen gods.
currently. Yes.
Okay. And not like some previous god that's no
Nope.
longer
I
there
think
or
he. I
something.
think. I think we're gonna meet him because he's a god,
I
and I think
I
he's just being sneaky.
I don't think he's a god. What if, okay, hear me out. What if
Okay.
he was a god, but since he was imprisoned, it could have been like
Well, we know
for
why
a
he was in prison. He was in prison for beating up
yeah,
a priest and those guys and like 20 other dudes at a bar.
yeah, but the thing is, it could be because like of a betrayal, you know?
So
A
he betrayed the
priest.
court of gods.
Yeah. And
Okay.
somehow, like, I mean, if obviously if like some other god is like behind the creation of like, gods in general,
Mhm.
um, there is gonna be a way to reverse it. So maybe he's just trying to collect enough to like reach back to that potential.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe they took because they make a comment about the breath. Losing your breath doesn't mean that you're dead. So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
they're going
Lightsong
to
goes.
attempt to reverse it.
Yeah. To be fair, Lightsong says he was told that if he gives away all his breath, he dies, but he has no memories, and he's obviously not given
Hmm.
away all his breaths. Has he? We don't know if he's seen that happen to a different god, or
It's
if
also
he's just
not
been told
stated
that.
in. Yeah, it's also not stated in like too directly that he can't use it to awaken something either.
Well, it is. It
It
does
just
say
says that
he specifically says he cannot awaken. He does not have awakener powers. He's not able to do that as a returned.
does it.
It does say that
I thought
specifically
I
at the
thought it
start of
was
Light
just I
Songs.
thought it was just it is a
What
thing.
if
No, I believe
what
it
if
does say. Where do I have that written down? Um. Sure, I had that written down. Where the fuck did it go? I'm gonna scroll through my notes now. I
what
don't
if you
remember where it
return
is,
as the return?
but I believe it is specifically stated somewhere that
I
he
got you.
is not able to awaken objects and stuff.
It's where they state. I'm pretty sure it's where they state that he cannot use the breaths to sustain himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh
I
yeah,
got
here we
you.
go. We learned that he has his own palace and he has thousands of breaths, but he can't use awakener powers. And if he gives away any of his breaths, he dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's why they say he can't use awakener powers is because like giving his breaths, I'm assuming even to an object, just it kills him. It sounds like.
Hmm. Still, even reading this doesn't. I don't know. Doesn't tell me
But
exactly. I
yeah, but then
guess.
again, we don't know if he's ever tried.
Yeah.
Like we don't know if
Yeah,
My
that's
as I'm
just something
saying.
he's been told, or if that's actually something that like he's
Yeah.
seen happen, or it's something that he's been told truthfully. We don't know.
my mind is going like million mile a minute right now.
All right.
There's so many possibilities.
So my next question was, what do you think of Ciri, Vivenna, and their family?
Well, I mean, we kind of
Um,
touched on all of that,
We
but
touched on it a little bit, but yeah, just overall, what do you kind of think of them and their
Siri,
family?
Siri is going to be my queen. Vivenna is going to be the knight in shining armor. I hate her dad. Baffin's awesome.
We have know
Kind of a
nothing of
really
Richard.
cool monk
not my
person,
dad.
and whoever this brother is, he might as well just not be existent because I've never seen
Actually,
him.
for real, he wasn't discussed that much.
He's not been discussed. We've not heard his thoughts on potentially Vivemma taking his place as the next to the heir. Like maybe he's
I
gonna
don't
be
know.
the
I don't
next
remember
one.
her wanting to either.
Well, yeah, it was just I think Fafin brought up like, oh, you might end up taking over now that you've not gone, and so like
Yeah.
maybe Richard's gonna be
Which
the
would
next
give
one with
her.
the POV where it's like I'm useless and redundant. Everyone in the family, I just am useless and redundant now.
Well, yes,
Okay.
because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
No.
So that yeah, just those are your general thoughts then. That the family just everyone's great except for Dad, and
Yeah,
who knows
hate
about
the
Richard?
only one I hate. Yeah, exactly. Richard might be even worse.
He could be
We'll find
great.
out.
He could be worse. Yeah.
For some reason, I have this feeling that what's the monk's name again?
Faffin,
Fafin.
Are gonna
the
have
other daughter.
to, yeah, they are gonna have to make this
Hmm? Did we lose them?
like abide by what they know. But yeah,
Mm.
other than that, I'm pretty solid on like all my opinions so far.
So sorry, I think you might have cut out a little bit there. What do you think about
I'm
Fafin?
pretty like I maintain the same opinions as I've already discussed.
Yeah. So
Um,
in general, just everyone seems pretty good except for the dad and Who knows about Roger? It's kind of just the general opinion.
I still think Vivanna's initiating her villain arc.
Oh yeah.
Or
But
war, or
other,
revenge arc.
yeah, other than that,
I'll make sure to write
we're
that down.
good.
Vivenna villain? Question mark.
Question mark.
All right. So then, now that we know more about the return, what do you think about Returned in general? Just like, what do you? I think you guys have had kind of a lot of theories already about like.
I think it's a lie. I think they're all being manipulated into thinking there's something they're not.
Like they're like,
I kind of want to know if the other ones think of are like in on their own hype.
Yeah, we don't
Lightsong
know.
doesn't seem to. Yeah, Lightsong doesn't seem to believe in his own religion. What if
Yeah,
they do?
he seems like he indulges in a lot of stuff. Like there's general talks about it, like him liking wine and naps and stuff. But like he generally seems to be like, I don't
Lots of
really
them.
consider myself a god fully. Like, and I take my duties that I've been told I should do like seriously because people are like spending money and spending stuff on me and like giving me breasts, so I should like try and do something back for them, even if I don't
a
believe in it all.
this is a collection of sugar people.
Yeah.
um, I feel like there's definitely gonna be that one god, that one character that's like overly like, I believe in my religion so much, like I am the god, you know.
Yeah,
um,
I am
Yeah,
the god of
Susabron.
whatever.
Yeah, Susabron's gonna feel like he's the god of everything.
Well, yeah, he's the god king,
I'm reserving my
king of the
opinions
gods.
on that
Yeah, we
until
haven't met
I actually
Susabron
meet
yet,
them.
which
God,
Yeah.
if we meet the god, this king, and he's just like this happy-go-lucky, I don't
I
give a shit
swear.
about nothing kind of shit. Oh God, it's gonna be so insane. Like
Yeah,
he's gonna be the complete polar opposite of what everybody in Idris thinks.
yeah,
If that happens, I will simp so hard.
yeah, we know that we're definitely gonna meet him because obviously Siri will meet up with him.
Yeah.
She has to have his child. They're gonna be very intimately familiar with each other, so we'll get lots
Hopefully
of.
they don't have to have a child and she'll be with Lightborn. That would be good.
Or hear me out, there could be a love triangle.
Oh gosh.
I mean, hey, I could see it.
Okay, anyway.
Anyway, so next question. I think we already have the answer to this, but what are your guys' favorite characters so far? I think you both have the same one.
Lights
It's like,
I
yeah.
have like a top 3.
There's
And
like
I
only
don't
like
know.
7
Most.
characters.
I don't know if you guys realize this, but they are the most like spread out unexpected
Oh,
things that you
okay.
can think
Tell
of.
me.
Do it.
Okay,
Go for it.
so obviously Light Song, right? This
Yeah,
one
everyone seems to love
is
Light Song.
expected, right?
Yeah.
Now you see, my second favorite character is,
Vivenna.
I don't even know if it can be considered it, but I like the sword.
Nightblood.
Oh, yeah.
Nightblood's definitely a
Yeah,
character.
Nightblood's, yeah,
Yeah,
Nightblood's cool.
okay.
I
And then
he's
the last
sentient.
one
He
is
can
the
be
cook.
considered a character.
The cook.
Map.
The cook. Yeah, I
Yep.
like Matt too. Yeah,
I felt so
I'm on the top
irritated.
of it.
I
As
felt
long
so
as Light Song
irritated.
is your number one. As long as Light Song is your number one,
Yeah,
we're the same.
yeah. I felt so irritated when they took Siri away, and I was like,
What about
they're
the
never
cook?
talking again. They're never talking again.
I'm gonna
What's
be
gonna
honest.
happen there?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if Map ever comes back. I
That's
don't know.
exactly the no.
I'm
We
not.
need a
She
She was
whole
supposed
might.
to make
I
spin-off.
don't know.
We need a whole spin-off book just about her.
I don't know. I don't remember if we get more POVs from the dad. We might see her more if we get more
I
POVs from the dad
I
and
want
stuff.
I want her to cook in the battlefield.
Oh yes.
It
Maybe
feels like
that's the Warbreaker.
yeah, based on what Siri said about Mab, it does sound like Mab was almost like a mother figure to her because like she's like, oh,
Yeah.
she taught me to cook. She taught me about like we've talked about like I think they talked about Christmas. I think she like taught her a lot of stuff. So
What
it
if
does
that
seem
She
like
was in
she's
the
almost
she was in the kitchen a lot as a punishment. So yeah.
yeah. So it seems like she was almost like nanny slash like mother figure because we don't know when their mom died or left or whatever happened to her.
Ascended.
Became a god. Yep.
Yeah, maybe.
Became a god.
Maybe we'll meet her.
That would be cool.
That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting considering that she's marrying the king.
Mhm.
Yeah. So also on the line of favorite characters, whose story do you think you're gonna be most interested in going forward? Are you most interested in like if Vasher and
Light Song.
Nightblood come back? Are you most interested in like Light Song and the Court of Gods?
Light
Are you
Song
most
is
interested
stupid.
in Ciri and her and the God King? Are you most interested in potentially Vivenna and whatever the fuck she's gonna plan on doing? We have no idea.
Light Song and series inevitable love life. That's
I'm
what going with.
interested in obviously sword, right?
The sword, yeah.
Um,
So you're interested in like Basher and Nightblood, where they're gonna go?
yeah, them. Uh, Light Song, but not like where he's headed, but more like his past.
Hmm.
Um, and also
So you're
what
hoping
the
his
heck
story is
is
gonna go
going.
more into like his past.
Yeah, and what the heck is happening with the king? So
So just like the war plans and like what's gonna happen with that.
yeah,
All right. And so what do you guys think of the magic system so far? What do you think of just how this magic system is in general?
I
I
think
think
it's
Darkness said
broken.
it earlier. Yeah, I
Think
think
it's
Darkness said it
broken?
earlier. Oh, you think it's broken?
Yeah, it's
But I
severely
like the
broken.
concept. I like the concept of one's breath being the magic.
Hmm.
I think there's a hidden like repercussion that nobody is discussing.
Oh.
Yeah,
But
there's no way that there is not a limit to this because this can be abused on multiple levels.
I will say that in
mm,
general, Brandon Sanderson's magic systems, one of the reasons people like his book so much is he has very, very like you don't learn about them right away because you tend to learn about them as characters learn about them or as they're revealed to you. But his magic systems are very much these are the hard limits on them. These is like almost like the scientific even in the fantasy world, this is almost like the scientific reason behind how this all works, and they're very well thought out and very structured. They're not just like you can do absolutely anything in the universe. He's very good at
so
actually
So
structuring.
there's repercussions. Yeah.
yeah. So what you're saying is a lot like what's
And
the
we get a little bit of it like how like when Vasher does use his awakening powers, like there's a very specific you
mhm,
must have this, you must have this, you must have this. And like keeping Var in the cell, this is how you stop an awakener. You take everything away from them. Like
all
no choice.
color,
All
all everything.
yeah. So like there's ways
What
to like
if
stop people.
okay, also something I didn't think of discussing until now, what
Mm-hmm.
about blind people?
I don't know.
Because they
I mean,
can't
perfect pitch. So
yeah, but they can't really reach that if they can't see color.
You mean perfect hues of color, you mean, I think Mythic.
yeah, well, no, I meant pitch. Like that's the second,
Yeah, second height
Yeah,
is
it
perfect
is.
whatever.
pitch.
Yeah, so they could hit the second one, but
They
I
could
don't
hit
know about the third one.
other so they basically could take maybe like they maybe couldn't awaken you think, but they could do like other
I
gain other
don't know how it
abilities.
would go by that. Like
Yeah, I don't yeah.
I don't does it ever come up?
I'm not sure if
Are
it
they
does come
blind?
up.
Are,
I
are
honestly
there any blind people in this?
I'm not sure if it ever comes up. I'm gonna be honest. It has been a few years since I've read this book, but I'm not sure they actually go into any blind characters or how that would work. To
That would
be
be
to be fair, they do
an
mention though
interesting
that like
topic.
most it is not common for everyone, I don't think, to have extra breaths. So like not everyone can awaken things, not every because like it also took him like 25 breaths just to do the little straw man or just to do like his cloak. So
Yeah,
like
one.
not so like you can't with just one breath, we don't know if you can actually do anything. Any awakening. You
Yeah.
have to have other people's breaths
Live.
and
See,
it's
here's the thing, right?
50 is a
That's
treasure,
true.
they said to people. Like not
Yeah.
everyone besides like outside of like
Yeah.
gods and stuff, not everyone has extra breaths because you have to have take them from other people
Yeah.
basically, so it might
Well,
not
so
matter if you're blind because you're not
if
going to
that's
get those powers
true,
anyways.
then wouldn't that mean that Light Song only took one breath?
He's been
If
taking one breath
if
a
a
week
normal
for
person,
5 years
yeah, that's what I'm
potentially.
saying. So the kid comes in, they only have a single breath.
Yes.
How does a single breath keep him alive?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, we're not
Also,
sure.
Yeah.
what let's say somebody with like multiple amounts of breaths like come in to get sacrificed in that way. Not
Yeah, would
sacrificed,
it?
but, like would it
That's a
sustain him for
sacrifice.
longer or
Yeah, we don't know because all we know is that he generally gets children, they probably don't have multiple breaths.
I,
um
I hate these unanswered questions.
I
Things
know. I
will
know.
he's very good at generally about explaining things, so we're hoping that
I want
you'll probably
Midnight
get
to just
more
say that
info
we can
later.
read from 4 to 58 next time, so we can get the whole book.
There actually is, I will say, I don't know if there's any timeline on this, but there apparently may be in the future a sequel to this book.
Ooh.
We've been told that
So it's an
Brandon says
open-ended
potentially.
thing.
Well, it's a complete ending because he wrote this I think back in 2009.
Oof.
Um, but he's said that he might want to go back to it and do something else. At least in the I don't know if it's gonna be a direct sequel or it's just gonna be in this world with this magic system. He might just do it like another story within it. I'm not sure. I've just kind of
He's
heard
gonna
like
do the
in
story of
general.
Light Song and Siri being a couple and lovey-dovey. And,
Um, all right, and then my final question was just besides what we've talked about already, is there any other general predictions you have for where this book is going, like where the plot's going, or anything about any specific characters that we haven't like given predictions for already?
If the Idris King doesn't die, I'm gonna be really sad.
Mm,
It's not really a prediction, but okay.
I know, but I predict he's gonna die. There you go.
mm.
Dead to him. What about you,
I,
Darkness? Any
I,
predictions?
not beyond the ones that I've already discussed.
Well, I'm just also just like in general, like where do you think the plot's going? Like, what do you think? Like,
Um,
I mean, you did say I think that you think there's obviously like there's going to be a war and series going to stop it, but like, what do you think like the
yeah.
general plot of the book maybe is going to be?
Um,
The war breaking.
what if? Okay, what if Siri and um Lightsong think of a way for some reason, because
Mm,
obviously they're not. I feel like they're not gonna be okay with what's happening.
mm,
Um, what if they think of a way to like sort of like steal like some of the power from the king? You know what I mean? Like a
Steal the breath from the king.
not steal the breath, but like sort of like stop his like power in like his reign. Because
okay.
the problem here is the king.
All
We
right.
don't
So
know that.
so
The
you
king could
think
be a deity
Well,
that is so nice and humble to everyone.
in the first place, well, I mean, the war is starting because of him. So,
That is also not stated. It's just that
well,
he is gonna bring a hell to this kingdom that I already don't like. So
mhm,
I mean, it kind
to
of
me, it's
is
a good thing.
mostly implied. So I'm assuming it.
mhm,
Um,
I know. I'm just making.
especially with the things that happened to the other king. Um, yeah. So I'm assuming it's like uh, kind of like a backstab from
mm,
within. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Yeah. So I feel like there's gonna be some like trying to overthrow the king sort of situation.
mm. So you think they're going to overthrow the God King specifically?
Yeah.
Mm.
Susabra.
Susabran. All right, and I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Thank you guys. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the book. It sounds like.
Yep. So we're gonna come back 4 to 58,
No,
right?
we're not doing that, Penny.